The Chargers, coming off a righteous victory against the Chiefs in Sao Paulo, Brazil in week 1, got another division rival to face in week 2 on Monday Night Football, the Las Vegas Raiders. So what is it going to take to beat those Raiders on Monday night in Las Vegas? Let's get into it. And the man, the myth, the legend is back. Young RG is in the building once again to join me for our game preview for the Las Vegas Raiders game against them Monday night. And the time for East Coast folks is brutal. I think it's 10 o'clock. So yeah, we'll have to take some Red Bulls or something around it. C4. I'm gonna have to do something, some type of energy drink to keep my juices flowing there. I mean, a little bit past my bedtime when the game ends. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough Tuesday. But listen, Raiders, if the Chargers beat you, I won't complain at all about that sleep I'm going to lose. So I'm not going to be mad about it all. So Chargers, let's get a good victory. Let's get that going so I can not be mad about the lack of sleep rhythms I'm going to get on Monday night. But my guy, Young RG, what's happening over there, good brother? Well, how you feeling? You're muted.
I just realized I was muted.
There you go.
I'm feeling great, man, after 1 week. Obviously coming off against a huge win against the Chiefs. I think a lot of Charger fans weren't necessarily expecting a win against the Chiefs. You know, obviously we all looked at the schedule, playing each of the division opponents in the first 3 weeks of the season. So we knew going into this season, we're going to find out, you know, what this team is made of pretty quick. And we certainly did. It only took about a week. And I think, you know, obviously with 1 week, it's a little tough, but just given all of the history going into that game, you know, the 7 straight losses to the Chiefs prior to that, obviously all the talk, Herbert ending last season with probably his worst game, I'd argue, in his career. But then he follows it up with probably the best game of his career. So this really has been, you know, kind of Herbert's, I don't want to say the stigma, but it really has been, you know, the narrative around Herbert so far is he does great in the regular season, but come playoff time, he can't perform. This was a great step in that direction to, you know, trying to prove those people wrong. But ultimately, you know, you heard Harbaugh say it at the, you know, in the pregame kind of walkthroughs they were doing. The Chiefs have won this division 9 years in a row.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
Exactly. Great motivational topic, great motivational speech that he gave. And yeah, we need more of that to keep them boys rolling, keep them motivated for sure. But I want to touch on that real briefly before we get into the game preview, because, you know, people use that narrative about how, you know, he's great in the regular season and doesn't do well in the playoffs. But if you actually count who actually plays well in the playoffs, the list is on one hand. You can argue that, you know, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes,
Josh Allen.
But now I want to give Josh Allen the credit, because every time he plays KC, what happens?
Yeah, but in his defense, that's like that's like with the Steelers and Brady. You know,
right.
the Steelers went to
that's kryptonite, right? Yeah,
right. But look at when they didn't have to play him in the postseason, they went to 2 Super Bowls and they won 1.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of, for the Bills, it's a little bit tougher. I give Josh Allen that credit because he plays good enough for his teams to win.
Yes, I
and
agree
his defenses have let him down. Now, you know, somebody like Lamar, that's somebody you can potentially question based on his play in the playoffs. You know, team has sort of kind of let him down in parts and in moments as well. But obviously, you're the quarterback. You get the bulk of the blame. You get the bulk of the praise when you do good. So that's the life of a QB.
Yes, too much of the credit, too much of the blame. That's how it rolls. You're right.
Completely agree.
Well, like I said, it's like it's on one hand, really. You probably count 5 quarterbacks out of 32 that do well in the playoffs. So it is coming. And again, it's a real Peyton Manning like arc, because Peyton Manning was absolute trash in the playoffs until he wasn't, right? So, it just depends on what you got going for yourself and me, because it's not a one-man show. It's a team game ultimately. So we'll see. I won't put the cart before the horse as far as what Herbert's going to do this season, but I definitely have to address that narrative, because they always say that Herbert's this, Herbert's that in the playoffs, but you probably, the team you root for, your quarterback is probably the same way right now.
I was just having that topic or that conversation with somebody earlier today. It's like, everybody loves to talk trash on Herbert, but like you mentioned, 2/3 of this league would trade their QB for him in an instant if they had the opportunity.
I think the top 10, there's only maybe 10 teams out there they wouldn't, maybe 5. This depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but a lot of people are fans of their team are very attached to their QB. So I don't know if a lot of people would want to, but there's been that question. You ask all 32 GMs, who are you starting a league or who are you starting your team with? Mahomes, Herbert, Allen, Lamar, like those are Burrow. Those are like the 5 guys that everybody kind of goes.
That part. But we won't get off to a tangent too far. We won't talk about these Raiders. Let's just get into Let's get into Raiders week. So the Raiders are going to host us this week in Vegas and Allegiant Stadium, Monday Night Football. It seems as if we always seem to get a primetime game or some type of I guess you can say fanfare around this rivalry, right? Which is a story one. It's been back and forth, and I always tell folks when they ask me about the Raiders game that no matter how good or bad the Raiders are, they always seem to play us tough. I don't know what that is. Maybe just that deep-rooted bad blood. Even though people that are new to the franchise seem to just get indoctrinated into that rivalry real quick. So it's gonna be a tough game. I'm not going to sit and act like it's gonna be a cakewalk, because I think you alluded to in our recap of last week that we're the better team. We should win, but it's one of those things where you have to come to play the game in order to give it a go and really get that victory, because you're not going to get it handed to you. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say really quick, and in former, normally this game would scare me, right? With past regimes, this game would definitely be one where I'm like, oh, would not shock me one bit if we lost this game. It
definitely has trap game written all over it early in the season.
Yes. And it's not, not a trap game in the sense that the Raiders are a terrible team and the Chargers are like just that much better, but it's a trap game in the sense of, on paper, the Chargers do look like the better team. Obviously, have the better quarterback, and that's not to poo-poo on Geno. He's a great quarterback, but he's just not in that realm of Herbert. And they have a great coach from last year. They are very similar. I've said this so many times. They are very similar to us last year. New head coach, new complete just makeover of that team. Like I said, new coaching staff, new kind of ownership somewhat, with Brady coming in and maybe trying to right in the ship there a little bit. But I feel like this game, it could either way. If the Raiders win close, Chargers win close, would not shock me one bit.
I like it. So so let's talk about the Monday night matchup, and let's talk about our keys to the victory, what's the strengths and weaknesses of everybody, and what date we feel like is going to be the delineation between the teams and what's going to ultimately be the outcome. And we'll give our predictions at the end. So starting off with the injury report before we get into our I guess you say nitty-gritty of the report. So it looks as if for the Chargers, Elijah Molden and Denzel Perryman, which we likely knew with his being in a boot most of last week, him not going to play this week with a high ankle sprain. Elijah Molden tweaked his hammy. He didn't practice all this week, so he's out. Delshon Phillips, who's a reserve linebacker, is questionable with a toe. But the news and the most noteworthy name on this list for the Raiders is Brock Bowers. He went out with a knee in their first week matchup against the Patriots, and he didn't practice until Saturday, which was limited. And the game was on Monday, so I'm not sure if they're going to do any walkthroughs or anything like that on Sunday. But in regards to him practicing, but as Pete Carroll did signify that he was going to play, they are be without their right guard / center Jackson Powers Johnson with a concussion. He's still in protocol. And Landon Roberts is a full participant. So, it's not too many injuries on either side, which is good news after 1 week. But yeah, some I guess you can say for us, Elijah Molden and Denzel Perryman is the most noteworthy ones, and Brock Bowers on their side being questionable on whether or not he's going to play with that knee, or to the point where he may be, on a snap count per se. It might be one of those things because he didn't practice for 2 days out of the week, out of the 3 practices. So we'll see how that rolls. But for him to be their biggest weapon, if he's hampered in any way, that's definitely a positive for the Chargers for sure.
Yeah, I think, with him, even with this injury, if he's, questionable, limited, however he's going to be on Monday, I think regardless, you got to you got to sell out to stop Genty,
Mm,
and just kind of hope that, if Bowers beats you on a pass here or there, he's that talented that even injured, he can make plays. But I think the fact that he was a DNP 2 days in a row,
mhm.
only gets the one practice on Saturday. It is a Monday night game, so you do get that extra rest, but I do think they're going to be very cautious with him this early in the
I
season.
would, I mean, rivalry aside, I would definitely be cautious with my
Oh
number
yeah.
one target for sure. I would not try to, ride the wave or ride it to
No,
the wheels
no.
fall off for sure. Definitely not riding that train to the wheels fall off in this one. If he's hobbling at all or he gets tweaked at any situation at any time, I'm going to pull him just for the sake of the season. But that's just for longevity purposes. But yeah, I definitely agree with you.
And
And
you got
that's
Mayer,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you
it's not
have.
my liver. Yeah,
No, yeah, and he's obviously not Bowers, but he is he'd be a tight end one. I'd argue
on
on,
some
a few
teams.
other teams.
You would.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So yeah, he's not chopped liver at all. So I think he can get
No.
it done in a reserve role. I think they like to use two tight ends, especially in Pete Carroll's type systems. So
Right.
yeah, but yeah, if Bauer's not out there or he's limited in any way, that like I said, I would say that's definitely an advantage for the Chargers. But we'll see how things flow. But he's definitely a number one target, and we'll see how things shake up when he gets on the field on Monday night. All right, so moving on to the advantages and strengths and weaknesses for each team. So we'll get into I get our opinion, maybe one or two things on each side we feel like the Chargers have an advantage for as well as the Raiders. So starting with the Chargers, RG, what do you think they have an advantage at, in regards to the Raiders going against them in week two?
Well, it's hilarious that I'm going to be saying this because at the beginning of the year, everybody kind of looked at this position group as our biggest weakness and the
Mhm.
biggest reason why we won't have success this year. But it's got to be the wide receiver room, man. I mean, after
Mhm.
that showing against KC, and
Yeah.
this is KC yet to be remains to be seen how that secondary is going to look. It could be awful if Jalen Hurts goes out there and throws for 300. Then I'll be like, okay, it might be a little bit of just the Chiefs secondary is that bad.
Right.
Uh, However, we are it's very early going off of week one grades, quote unquote. We are going from one of the worst secondaries to another pretty bad secondary. Um, the Raiders did allow, I think it was 287 to Drake May
Mm,
this past weekend. Um, and, the wide receiver room in New England, let's just say, couldn't hold a candle to the
yeah.
one we have right now.
Yeah.
It maybe just rubbing a little bit of more salt in that wound for Patriots fans. They just traded Jalen Polk, who was their second round wide receiver that they drafted in front of Lad. So not even a full 2 years in the
Mm,
league, he
mm.
is already out of there.
Wow.
And we obviously played them last year and Lad torched them. So that one was even a little bit worse for them. So yeah, this wide receivers room for the Chargers. I mean, we were talking a little bit before the show. I wouldn't be shocked if all three of these guys, Quentin Johnston, Lad McConkey, Keenan Allen, I would not be shocked if all three of them win for 70 plus. Like if that's how Herbert's going to sling it against the
Mhm.
Chiefs and
Mm.
he has diced up the Raiders in his career, I fully expect him to continue more or less of the same.
I like it. I like it. For me, I think that it really can be one in the interior trenches for me on all line. I think that with Mekhi Becton, Zion Johnson, and Bradley Boston all being really good run blockers, in this D line, being weakened with Christian Wilkins no longer being there,
Yeah.
I think that internal runs in this game could be a gold mine for the Chargers because again, their strength is on the edges at this point with Max Crosby, Kuntz, and Tyler Wilson. So I believe that if they're going to be a little, quote unquote, soft in the middle, pause if needed. you know, I think that if they're going to be with their weaknesses, the interior D line, I think that if we can get the hog mollies moving downhill in the interior and get Najee and Amarion moving, 3 to 4 yards a clip inside zones and leads and things of that nature. I think it could be a good opportunity to wear them down early and take the advantage and get up on them and try to let this game not be left a chance later on. So if they can get the internal run game going, I think that's a good advantage for the Chargers for sure for me. So moving over to the disadvantages, what do you think the Chargers are at disadvantage against the Raiders?
I think the disadvantage we might face against the Raiders is going to be we're obviously down a couple linebackers.
Yeah.
So the coverage for those tight ends, we talked about Bowers a little bit. We obviously mentioned Mayer. If Bowers does play, even if he is in somewhat of a limited role, the lack of linebackers we have right now, with Perryman being out and Phillips being a maybe,
Right.
it's going to be really tough. We're going to have some Marlowe Wack is the guy that's going to have to kind of step up. Troy Dye, I think we feel really confident in stepping up into that linebacker too. We obviously have Dayon Henley still.
Right.
But it's just going to be, again, if Bowers is out there, that's now 2 tight ends you got to worry about. And like you mentioned, Carroll loves to run those 2 tight end sets. So that's definitely something that, maybe without injuries, it wouldn't have been as much of a concern. With injuries, definitely something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on.
I like it. For me, it's the right tackle in the edge. I think that if their defensive coordinator is smart, I do believe that he will line up Max Crosby exclusively against Trey Pipkins all game, especially in second and third, pass situations. Those type of pass situational downs. I think that he definitely will try to utilize Max Crosby's ability to get to the quarterback against our weaker of the tackles. I think it will be mute point to him to line up against Joe Alt at all. I think we already got a sample size of that last year.
And he don't want none of that.
Yeah, and I think he looks even better this year, if for my money. So I don't think you want to waste your pass rush reps on him going to get Joe Alt. I think you're gonna mix and match some tackles, some stunts, and put Crosby on the edge and that wide 9 and make Pipkins earn his money. So I think that's where it is. There's going to be a disadvantage if that's going to be the case all game long.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I wanted to say I was going to go with the tackle groups, instead of the linebacker position, but it's like Alt is just so damn good. I can't bring myself to say it. You went just one position, right tackle. 100% agree with that. Max Crosby is going to need some paying attention. We're going to do a lot of chip blocking, a lot of help pulling of the guards. I fully expect Harbaugh. That is, the X factor, the circle and walkthroughs. We are like, this guy cannot beat us. He cannot be the reason we lose.
Agreed. I cannot wreck the game. I agree with you there 100%. So yes. So for us, between the O-line and the linebackers, the right tackle, let me say the O-line. The right tackle for our sake against Max Crosby, and the interior linebackers for us in our depth could be a disadvantage. Advantage, the interior O-line for me, and against their interior D-line, and the wide receiver core against their secondary. Yeah, so it should be a good time. So let's move over to the Raiders real quick. Let's talk about what we feel like their advantages and disadvantages are in their side. So what do you think they have an advantage against the Chargers?
Man, if anything, Geno, it's funny. The best way the Raiders have to win, in my opinion, is also what the Chargers want them to do. And I know that kind of is a little bit counterintuitive, but bear with me a second. The Raiders with Geno have a far better passing offense, clearly, than they ever had at any point last year. And maybe since Carr left, if we're being honest, because they really haven't had consistent QB play since Carr left.
Nope.
And that last year he was there, there was some questions already with him. But regardless, Geno does possess the ability to throw them to a win. Yep. He threw them to a win last week against the Patriots. I think what gives me
pause.
Not confidence. That's what I was looking for. Confidence in the Chargers to win is the QB comparison. Geno at this stage right now in his career compared to Drake May, better QB.
Right.
Herbert compared to Geno at this stages in their careers, better QB. And you're always when you're in shootouts, if you have the better QB, your chances of winning shoot up exponentially.
Right.
But for the Raiders, I feel like it's tough because we have a really solid run defense. And if they're not able to get Genty going, it's going to have to be Geno. But in that same breath, he turns the ball over. And if we can capitalize on those situations, because he will give us a chance, we have to capitalize. And because we didn't turn the ball over once against KC. And not only did we not turn the ball over once, we didn't even come close to turning the ball over once, really.
Right.
So we're going to need to change that. And that needs to be a point of emphasis up and early.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, okay. For me, I think it's coaching. I think it's the top. I think coaching is an extreme advantage because they haven't had competent coaching for a good while.
Yeah.
Top to bottom. I mean, let's be honest about it. I think that we have to, come with the reality that, this is one of the best, and maybe ultimately the entire NFL is the best coaching staff in the entire division. This division is the entire best coaching staff in the whole division is the best division coach wise in the whole entire NFL. So I think that, you have to understand that every time you play a divisional game now, you want to see good coaching. It's not going to be a situation where I can kind of get by with the idea that they're going to coach themselves out of a win. We are well aware of that. We've gotten coached out of wins plenty of times, so we know what it feels like. So to be on the other side of that and say that you are not going to be coached out of a win and you're going to be in the game, you're not going to make the usual mistakes that will ultimately cost you a game will ultimately be an advantage for them, in my opinion. So the normal Raider mistakes we're used to, we're probably not going to see them. So I think that's where it's ultimately an advantage from a game perspective that the Raiders are going to have to, say that they can hang their hat on. They don't have to worry about that going forward. So yeah, I think that's an advantage for them. So moving over to the disadvantages, what do you think is the disadvantage for the Raiders going against the Chargers?
Oh man, I mean, I think that just that defense as a whole has to be a massive disadvantage for the Raiders coming into this game. And that's not to say that they're not talented; they have talent, but it's compared to the Chargers and compared to the Chargers coaching. This is the second year in the Minter system, and in the first year of the Minter system, we led the league in points per game allowed. So, I mean, he came into the league on fire. There was, for like 2 or 3 weeks last year, there was talks about is Minter going to get a head coaching job at the end of this year? Is he going to be a one and done DC and already get head coaching opportunities? Obviously, that wasn't the case because the Chargers sort of came back down to earth a little bit as the season went on. Still finished very well, but I think that, like I mentioned previously, Herbert has notoriously in his career diced up the Raiders. Raiders fans love to pull that 63 to whatever it was when it was Easton Stick and the team had already given up on Staley. Whatever, they can enjoy that one. Herbert, we all have seen it in his career, has put up great numbers against the Raiders. And if you, like you mentioned, if Omarion Hampton, if Najee are able to get this running game going even just a little bit to where the Raiders are going to have to think about it somewhat to that defense is guessing, play action is going to be going and it's going to be impossible to stop Herbert unless you're getting pressure on him. And that's where Crosby comes in. Unless you're getting pressure on Herbert in this game, he is going to pick you apart.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for sure. For me, the disadvantage, I think that they might not have the confidence that they once had in their run game because they didn't run the ball well against the Patriots. And I thought that if anything, they would with, a healthy O-line and things of that nature. I don't know, maybe losing Jackson Powers-Johnson in that contest may have hurt it. But, I mean, you should be able to get it done by losing one. If you lose two, I get it. But having a high draft pick and running back who you was going to be your quote unquote bell cow, and for you to run the ball 20 times for less than 50 yards, that's concerning. That's concerning. And I would argue that, you might be facing a better run defense. I mean, I could be maybe a homer take, but I mean, you could ultimately, with that scheme in that front, you could be facing a better run defense this week. So if you can't get it going against the Patriots, what's going to look like against the Chargers? I think that might be a disadvantage to them as well.
Patriots did, have a bit of a revamped D-line this year, so that could also be a case of, that money looks like it's being paid off well.
There's
obviously, still,
there.
There's a lot of money in that D-line, so very well could have been a case of that. The Patriots they're still kind of an enigma this year. We don't know what they're going to be. Drake May is the biggest wild card because if he's great, that team could be great. If he's not great, that team could be awful. So it's definitely it's tough this early in the season because you don't know what to believe. You don't know if what's an overreaction and what's a calm take.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. So yeah, it was hard to gauge what they look like against the Patriots because we thought the Patriots were going to come out flying and may even beat the Raiders, and they just, I would argue that the Patriots kind of gave the game away and kind of left it land in the Raiders' lap just for them to take. So it's hard to gauge. Definitely hard to gauge.
When Geno's throwing for 360, that's tough, man. That's a tough game to come back from.
That's true. That is true. All right, so ultimately, what do we feel like the keys to victory are? Like, what is it going to take for the Chargers to beat the Raiders, in your opinion?
My first key to victory is, and we've mentioned this already, it's got to be protect Herbert. Got to have that same O-line that showed up in Brazil needs to show up here in Vegas. If Herbert can stay upright, we've already gone over it a bunch about all the numbers against the Raiders, everything. He will win you this game if you keep him upright. And that's honestly why we'll get to the predictions in a little bit. I
Right.
almost kind of spoiled it for a minute there.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like that it's ultimately got to be that. Herbert is that type of QB who can go in there with no running game and win you that game. If you can go give him some protection and even just a semblance, if this is the Omarion breakout game, I see us. I don't want to say cruising to a win, but I see us sort of similar to the Chiefs game where it's nip and tuck all game long, but the Chargers can take a lead early, hold that lead through, and then, still finish the game without ever have given it up, even though your heart's pounding through the entire game.
Right. I get it for sure. Yeah, I mean, to kind of to your point, the sentiment is the same for me. Protecting Herbert and getting that run game going because it was not flowing well against that stout run defense in KC last week. Much to the, my point about the Raiders not running the ball last week, we didn't either. But I would argue that we faced a much better run defense, in my opinion. So I think that us getting the running game going and then, we'll ultimately, kind of let people see the nuanced passing game against the Chiefs because we kind of had to. So they know there's going to be a different type of Chargers football this year. But let's get back to basics. If we can do it, do it. Get back to basics, run the ball, get Omarion and Najee moving downhill. That'll open up the play action game, and Keenan and Ladd and Quentin will be running all day. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Don't go against the grain so much this week because I think we can run the ball a little better against the Raiders than we did against the Chiefs for sure. So start that train rolling early, get it going often.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great game too, just because of obviously the two running backs. Obviously, the only two running backs taken in the first round of this year's draft. Yeah. They will forever be tied together through draft, through the teams they were drafted to. Their careers will be 1-1 as we see them move.
Crazy is that get drafted in the same freaking division? That's crazy. Yeah.
I said this when both these guys got drafted. It's going to be some tough-nosed, brutal football between these two teams.
I like it. Okay. All right, so let's get to predictions. So who wins and why?
I mean, if you watched the video I put out, a little shameless plug, Lockdown Defense Sports, check it out. I got the Chargers winning this game 27-26. I think it's going to be like I mentioned, back and forth, nip tuck. Like nobody is ever going to be, win probabilities will be at 50% right around the whole game. But I do think the Chargers ultimately edge the Raiders out at QB. I think currently with the Jackson Powers-Johnson injury as well, I think the Chargers have the better O-line going into this game. I think Raiders got it in the D-line. Chargers have it at just about every other position in the defense besides the D-line. Raiders got us in the tight ends. We got them in the wide receiver rooms. Running back is a wash, you could argue. So, I think we have the advantages in the right areas, namely being QB and the back end of the defense. And maybe trying to promote this a little bit too. Check out our props bets that we have. I went 3 for 3 week 1, but for this game, I got Geno throwing a pick for sure. I think they're going to have to throw a lot to have a chance in this game. I think Genty will do a good job of keeping him contained. I won't say, to that, what was it, 2.5 yards a carry it was against New England, but I think we can keep him around that 3 to 4 range, very, very early 4s. But yeah, I like our chances in this one, and it'll be close. Would not shock me if the Raiders took it, but I got the Chargers going to 2-0, baby, and squeaking out a 1-point win over the Raiders.
I like it. So yeah, I'm hoping for that for a fall off. I mean, the Chiefs win takes a lot out of you, but they had a lot of had a little bit of a mini bye with the Friday game to kind of come down off that high horse and get back to work. So hopefully Harbaugh has some boys focused. And if I'm going to bank on that, I'm going to say that I think the Chargers win 24-13. I don't give the Chiefs, I'll give the Raiders as much credit as you do, although I do believe they'll play us tough. I do believe that talent wins in this league. If your coaching is the same, your talent will ultimately push you over the top. And I think in most positions, most areas on the field, toe to toe, head to head, I think the Chargers, win that talent battle, hands down. From the quarterback to running backs, O-line, D-line, edge rushers, secondary, all you name it. I think they have a leg up in pretty much all those categories. So they should come out with a sounding victory, and that will prep us to get ready for the Broncos, which might be our toughest game to date on the schedule with their defense and how they're playing. So yeah, I think 24-13, the Chargers take it. We get back to business and go 2-0 in the division for my money.
Yeah, man, going to that's the biggest thing. Obviously, we can, project how we're going to win and everything. Biggest thing we need to come out of this game with is a win, because not only is 2-0, great. 2-0 is much better than 1-1. You're also 2-0 in the division. You own the division, for the first 2 weeks for whatever that's worth.
Right.
And like you mentioned, this is like bam, 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 quick with it. Back-to-back primetime games against division opponents, and then you're right into the third one. You go to Denver, right? No, we're at home. We're at home for that one. That is our first home game of the season. Yep. So, I know it's out, forecasting a bit, but man, if we could go 3-0 and 3-0 in the division to start,
that'd be lovely. That'll be lovely. Looking pretty. But we're gonna put the cart before the horse, like we said, but then we definitely we'll try to get this victory on Monday night, and then we'll be back for sure, to give our game recaps and get you ready for week 3. But if you're looking for the Electric Shock Podcast on the Fascinating platform, here's our socials. Electric Shock Pod across all platforms. Hit that sub button for the YouTube channel. Let the YouTube algorithm know we're doing big things out here. You hit us up on social media. Got any Chargers questions, any news that you want to get up to date on, please hit us up. Drop a comment in the video and let everybody know that your fandom is high and you're running wild with this boat train that's rolling through Vegas, and hopefully we get a W. Like I said, we'll be doing our recaps and our previews for next week's game and throughout the week. So look out for that content. But that is the young RG, the young Padawan himself there, Charters, insider for the Sports Network, and my faithful companion for the Electric Shock Podcast. And I'm Coach Defense, man. We'll see what happens Monday night, but I'm looking for a righteous victory, and we can call them back and celebrate again for week 2. But in the meantime, between time, man, you always got to do one thing and one thing well. You always got to remember to vote up.